look at the interview questions, the coding interview questions, I landed upon an isogram. So what really is an isogram? What exactly is it, and how do we create a function that outputs an isogram? Now, an isogram is simply a word that has no repeating letters, consecutive or non-consecutive. Meaning, if you have a word like the word mom, it's not an isogram because it has the repeating letter M character. If we have a letter like database, it's not an isogram because it has very many letters. Letter A, there are so many instances of letter A. If we have a word like query, now query is an isogram because it has no repeating letters, meaning there are no characters like it. Now I'm going to make two examples of this isogram. I'm going to make two examples of a function. So basically in this tutorial we're going to look at the implementation of a function that determines whether a string is an isogram or not an isogram. If it's an isogram, it's going to return true. If it's not, it's going to return false. So let's jump right into it. So assuming we have a function called isogram. Now this function is going to take in a parameter of string, and it's going to output if this string is an isogram or not. So assuming we have, let me just have some use cases up here so that we have a basic understanding of it. So assuming we have a letter like database. Database is not really an isogram because it has the very many instances of the letter A. Assuming we have another word like query. You see, query is an isogram because it has no repeating letters at all. Let's assume we have another function like welcome, another word like welcome, sorry. So welcome is not an isogram because it has two instances of the letter E. Alright, so I want to make this function to be in such a way that it does not matter whether there is an uppercase or a lowercase. So suppose we have the word like the letter welcome and this E is capital, it's still not an isogram because they are still repeating letters, instances of E. So the first thing we're going to do, since we are going to be ignoring whether it's uppercase or lowercase, is that we're going to change this into an lowercase, all of them. So the method to have a string be converted to lowercase is string.toLowercase. The reason I'm equating this to a string variable is because this method right here is non-destructive, meaning if I just write string.toLowercase, it does not really affect the original variable. But if I reassign the variable and I reassign it to the lowercase version of it, now it will be like a destructive way of handling it. So that means the string the original string is somehow destructively changed. Okay, so we have started by this having the string.toLowercase. Now the other thing is that we are just going to check if this string has multiple instances of it. Now there are two ways we can go about with this, and let me just write them right here. So there are two ways that we can deal with this scenario. The first way is that we can use a nested loop, and the other way is that we can use a set. Now if you are aware of sets, you know that sets don't accept any repeating characters at all. So that's why we have sets. So let's start with a nested loop. So if we have a nested loop, how are we going to go about it? So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to iterate through this string, this parameter of string. I'm going to iterate through it, and then once I iterate through it, I'm going to check every letter against every other letter that exists. So for instance, I'm going to check, for instance, if we had the word query, I will check Q against U, against E, against R, and against Y. So that's how I'm just going to, basically that's how I'm going about it. So let's have a nested for loop. So we'll start by defining I being equal to 0, and then we're going to define I being less than the length, and then we're going to increment it. Okay, now we're going to define j, the variable j, equating it to, now j is equals to I plus 1. No, actually let's just place it to be 1, doesn't really matter. So j being less than string length, and then j shall be incrementing. Alright, so now we have this. So supposing, let's just look at it in a fun kind of way so that we know how this function will, this for nested for loop is going to implement. So it will start at, suppose we have the letter like database, it will start by checking the 0. We know that indexing in a string starts from 0, so the index of 0 is q, so it will check q against j, which is 1, and then it will move to 2, and then the other ones, so forth and so forth. That's just how it goes about. So there is something I want to do here. I want to change this to be -1, because I want the iteration of I to stop at the second, not the last letter, but the second last letter, because j now looks at the last letter. Okay, so how this works is that it checks q against u against e against r against y, then it moves to u and it checks u against e against r against y. Yeah, so that's basically how it goes about it. So for starters, I will say is equals to I plus 1. So that's the starting of it, and then I'm just going to check. So I'm going to check if I'm checking if string at I is equal, I'm going to use a strict equality operator, is equals to string at j. Okay, and then I'm going to check. Okay, so if the string at I is equals to string at j, it means this is not an isogram, so we'll just return false. However, if we don't find any such instance of this or this, we are going to return true. Alright, so that's basically how we go about it. So let's try and have isogram of the word like welcome. So welcome, let's have an isogram. In fact, let's log this so that we see the result. Okay, we can use the terminal this time around. Right, so I'll write the node isogram. That's just how to run in the terminal. So writing it's false, because true, yeah, it's false. It's not an isogram because they are repeating instances of welcome. We have a word like abba. Of course, this one should be false. So running it again, false. Let's have a word which is an isogram so that we can tell. So query, running it, true. So basically that's just how we run an isogram using nested loops. So this one I will say using nested loops. Okay, so that's how we go about it. So let me come up with another function, and this time I will be using a set. Okay, so we will have a function is isogram using set. It will take in a parameter, and then the first thing I'm going to do, just like the other one, I will change this to be a lowercase, and then I'm going to define a set. Let me call this set words. So let me call it let word set. be equal to, and when we are having a new set we use the new keyword, so new and set. Yeah, that's just how we go about it. Then what you're going to do is that we're going to iterate through this particular string, and if it has a word which is and then we're going to iterate through the string, and then for every iteration we're going to add that iteration to a set. So anytime we find that there is a letter which is already in the set, will now return false. Okay, so now let's go. So I'm going to first use a for loop to iterate through it. So let I in string, and then I'm going to check if word set, actually let me call this, instead of I, let me call it character. Let character. So if word set has character, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to return false. Okay, and then if it doesn't have, I'm going to add this character to the set. So I'm going to say word set dot add, and then I'm going to add that particular character. Yeah, and then finally I'm going to return, if the false is never returned, I'm going to return true at the very end here. Okay, so let's console log this so that we see the actual result of it. So running is isogram using set, and then we shall pass in a word like, let's pass in the words we first used. So welcome. Now let's run it, we see the difference. True. You see there's an issue here, because this word is in there, because this is not actually the right value, because it's not an isogram. It should not return true. The keyword true should not really exist. So now let's look at it. We see where is the issue at. So looking at it very, very keenly, we can see that there is an issue at so if word set has character, I'm trying to find out if there's anything wrong. I'm just looking if there's anything wrong with the code. To be honest, I don't really see any. Oh yeah, the issue is here. You can't write in, it's for, not for off actually. You use off to iterate through strings. So now when we run it, yeah, it's false. True. When we run like abba, it should be false. Once again, we run like mom should be false. Actually, writing it like that, false. Now we have a word like query. So running it, query is actually true. Yeah, so that's just basically how we go about writing isograms, writing a function to print if a number is an isogram or not. Until then, see you. Thank you for being around.